If you're looking to pass your ITIL 4 foundation exam in the quickest way possible, well, this course is for you. This Cram course is designed to give you everything you need to know to pass your exam in the shortest time possible. I'm Andrew Ramdial, and I'm going to be presenting this course to you. This course will cover every single one of the exam topics, not in depth, but we're going to go into just what you need to know to pass your exam. Hint the term Cram course. Now, if you're looking for the full course or you're looking for the exam vouchers at a discounted price, check out our website, tiaexams.com. We have a huge discount off of the actual exam voucher on our website. So check that out. And with that, let's get started. Now, before I go in to this actual course here, I want to just show you guys a couple things, and that's going to be the exam objectives. That's the first thing you guys should do, and you should download this before we even get started. So I want to show you guys, how are we going to get the exam objectives? Let's go to Google and let's type in ITIL 4 Foundation Exam Objectives. And I'm going to get past all the sponsored links here. And there is a site called Axelos, and you guys can see it right here. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to scroll down. And there is this thing here that says ITIL 4 Foundation Exam Syllabus. Go ahead and click on that and download it and store it. Now, this syllabus is important for your exam. This is everything that we're going to be covering in this entire course, and is also going to tell us everything you need to know. All right, so I want to just briefly go over this quickly. The beginning of it, the first page of it, is basically just telling you what the exam is about, which I'll be going over with you in a minute. There are these things called Bloom's taxonomy, and there is what's called Bloom's level 1 and level 2. Anytime you read this document and you see something that says level 1, means you need to memorize that definition. I'm going to be giving you the definition in the course. So if you go through this and you see something here, like all of these terms, service, utility, warranty, customers, and you see it says level 1, well, in the presentation today, you want to memorize those definitions. Where you see something like cost, value, organization, and it says BL2, that means you don't need to memorize the definition, but you need to have a good understanding of it in there. So don't forget what these BL1 and BL2 actually stands for. So that's what this is telling you. I'm going to be going over all of this, and we're going to be going over every single one of these things. Why am I pointing this out? Download this document before you take your exam. Review that entire document, and where you see something that says BL1, you better be able to memorize that definition and recall it right out of your mind. Where it says BL2, just be able to describe it. They will never cover anything on this exam that is not in those exam objectives, so make sure you have them. And with that, let's get back to our presentation. So let's get into this. What are we going to be covering in this particular course? Number one, I'm going to give you the exam format. That's this topic right here. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to what exactly is ITIL. We'll take a look at what's called key concepts of basic service management, and then we'll get into the core of ITIL, which is the 4 dimensions of service management, the service value system, the service value chain. We'll take a look at how to continuously improve our IT services. And then the biggest part in the ITIL Foundations textbook is going to be the practices, and we're going to get more into that. Let's keep going. Now, I want to point out that this is a Cram course, so I'm going to be talking real fast because we got a lot to get through in a short amount of time. Let's get started. The first thing up we want to talk about is the exam format. Now, I do want to point out that the ITIL exam is an online test. You will take this at your home in a nice quiet room. Make sure you have a webcam, and make sure you have a functional computer with good internet. So this is an online exam. And how do you become ITIL certified? Well, first of all, you got to pass this exam. So this exam is going to be a 40-question exam. Now, that's not a lot. I'm telling you guys, that's not a lot, because a lot of other certification exams is 180 questions, like a PMP. CISSP exams are going to be like up to 150 questions also, or at least 100 questions. So keep in mind that it's 40 questions, so it's not a lot. And in order to pass your ITIL exam, you need to score 65%. In other words, you need to get 26 of the questions correct in order to pass. Now, that's not a lot of questions. In fact, most people will finish this entire exam, most of my students, within 30 minutes, but you do have a 1 hour time limit. Most of my students finish it within 30 minutes. When I took this exam, when it first came out a while back, I think I finished it in about 20 minutes. It's a pretty quick test. It's a closed book. In other words, you can't have no notes on you. You can't, no cheat notes, if you know what I mean. The exam fee. I must admit, this exam is pretty expensive. You guys are going to go to peoplecert.org. Go to peoplecert.org and check out the prices of the current exam. Right now, the exam fees are $700, I believe, plus US dollars. This will change every year, and it changes by country. So check it out. Where do you get the exam voucher? Don't buy it at PeopleCert. Why? Because they charge the full price. Go to my website, tiaexams.com. I'm going to give you a huge discount on that exam voucher. So check that out. And of course, I just mentioned the exam is given online, so you don't need to go to a testing center or anything like that. So remember, 40 questions, you need 26 of them, or 65%, and you must finish this exam within 1 hour. Now, what type of questions you have? So there are basically 4 types of questions. What's called a standard, a missing word, a list, and a negative question. Let's see what they look like. Number 1, a standard question. These are just general multiple choice questions. For example, what is the background of this slide? Is it white, blue, black, or green? No, of those choices. As you can tell, that's going to be very standardized questions. Just a question, choose one of the 4 choices. The other one you have is what's called a list choice, and you're probably going to get about 3 of these kinds of questions. Which of the following statement about the weather is correct? And then they'll give you 4 statements, as you can see here, and you're going to have to choose from the choices which of these statements are going to be correct, or sometimes they might say which one is incorrect. So, summer is cold, summer is hot, winter is cold, winter is hot. Which one of these would be correct? The other kind of question you would have is what's called a missing word. This is famous for BL1, or Bloom Taxonomies 1. And what that means is you have to be able to memorize the definition of particular words. Again, check the exam objectives for that. So during the summer, the weather is, and you got to choose one of these choices. Now, the last one is going to be called a negative question. Negative questions are basically a question that has this word. Hey, where is that pen today? Has this word not inside of it. So which of the following choices is not correct about the weather? So go ahead and select one of these choices. Remember, this is considered a negative question. So when taking your exam, those are going to be your 4 types of questions that you should expect on the test. The most common one is going to be the first one, a standard question. Now, the objectives of ITIL 4 Foundation. I want to point out something to all my students when I start teaching this course. ITIL 4 Foundation does not make you an ITIL expert. ITIL 4 Foundation barely touches the top of what is ITIL. It basically gives you an understanding of ITIL, but it doesn't teach you to implement ITIL. It's not something you can study and go back to your organization and start implementing ITIL. For that, fast forward to the end of the course and I'll go through some of the higher levels of ITIL that is out there. But keep in mind, you're not going to be an expert. All my objective to do, and ITIL 4 Foundation objectives to do, is to give you an understanding of what is ITIL, what are the terms in ITIL, and what are some of those practices. That is all this is going to be. So I want to give you an understanding of what is this ITIL 4 service management framework. I want you to be able to explain these concepts of this particular framework. And of course, I want you to pass your tests. And use this as a reference guide for work, studies, and professional development. So, hey, you can use this to get PDUs if you're maintaining a PMP or a CISSP. Use it to study for your knowledge. So that's the objectives, really, of ITIL 4. Remember, it's not to become an expert, but it's to become knowledgeable of what exactly is ITIL. Let's keep going. Now, the introduction to ITIL 4. The first thing up is that if you're looking at this, I want to mention ITIL is the most used IT service management framework in the world. And I want to point this out really well. And the reason for that is because if you notice, there isn't many frameworks available for IT outside of ITIL. In fact, most of the Fortune 500 companies will utilize ITIL. So if you're looking for IT work as basically an IT manager in these giant organizations like a Fortune 500, be prepared because they're going to want you to know ITIL. Now, the biggest thing I say about ITIL is that it trains IT folks like myself to rethink the way we see IT. Most people see IT in terms of technology. We may see it in terms of fixing laptops and desktops and installing servers and fixing software. Well, we're going to change the way we see that and to think about, stop thinking about the tech and start thinking about our customers and how they experience IT. Let's change the way we see IT from a technology perspective to a service perspective, and we utilize technology to provide a service. What do I mean by that? Think about this. Email, right? To provide emails to our users. Now, I'm going to assume we're all IT folks here, all right? I'm making that assumption. To provide email, you must have some kind of email server, a Microsoft Exchange server, or you have some kind of outsourced thing, Office 365. Somebody has to administer it. There's hardware, there's software, if you're using cloud-based services that are involved. From a technology perspective, we may see that as a bunch of server and services and software that gets it done. From a user perspective, the user doesn't see the technology. What the user sees is the service of being able to communicate. The service is communication. The method is email and all the technology that goes into providing that email. I want to remove your ability to, or your current view of technology and push it forward to the service aspect of actual implementing IT services. I don't want you to see IT from just a technology perspective. See it from the service perspective of great communications, effective communication, and then ask yourself, what service can I offer to enable great communication, and what technology can I use to actually enable that? That's how we're going to be seeing this. This is the ITIL view that you need to get your mind around. Now, ITIL 4 particularly has two main components that we're going to be going over in depth. I'm going to briefly cover them here, and you're going to go more in depth. We're going to be going more in depth to them coming up in a minute. Now, the first one here that I have, here, let's grab this and push this over. The first one here I have is going to be called, this thing called a service value system. A service value system really shows me the entire ITIL 4, this entire diagram here really shows me all that you need to know in terms of ITIL. This is the entire ITIL framework in one view. And just to give you a brief overview of it, I mean, if you think about this, what does people want, right? What does our customers look for? They're looking to gain value from IT services. They create a demand. They say, hey, we need a way to communicate more efficient. That's the demand. And the value they get is being able to send emails and communicate well, utilize an email. This is just one IT service, by the way. The question is, how are we going to provide that service? Well, that's with all these things. We're going to have principles we're going to follow. We're going to have to manage our services. We're going to have to create and deliver those services. There are a bunch of practices that we follow, like making sure our services are secure, making sure our demands are met, making sure problems are solved, incident management, any kind of issues that pop up. And of course, we want to continuously improve them. This here is the entire ITIL 4 in one view. Another part about this, when you're thinking about ITIL, the other component is what's called the 4 dimensions of service management. Think about this. When you provide a service, like email would be considered a service in an organization. When you provide a simple service like this, a lot of us are stuck right here. This part about information and technology. It's all about the tech. It's all about the service. It's all about those cloud services and user administration. Well, to provide email, it's more than that. It's the people that we have to manage within IT. It's not just the technology don't work by itself. Somebody has to administer it. We have to think about the processes that is involved in providing email. For example, what's the process in enabling user accounts, creating user accounts, setting up an email, testing that email? What's the process of archiving email? And then partners and supplies. Now, do you have your own internal email servers, or are you using something like Office 365 or Google Cloud or something like that? This, if you think about it, these four things is how we're going to be able to provide the products and services that gives our customers the value they're looking for. Remember, the value they're looking for is efficient communication. The service we're doing that with is with emails, one of the services. Now, when you think about all these things, there's all kind of external factors that can affect the way we manage our people, the way we manage technology, the processes we follow, the way we manage vendors, all kinds of external things like economic factors. Think about money, political, internal and external, environmental factors, technology factors, and so on can affect all of this. Lots of things here to unpack. We're going to come more in depth to this coming up later in the course. Now, I want to point out something here. We just went over this. When you're looking at this, and I told you, this diagram right here is the entire ITIL 4 in one big glance. All right, so we talked about this is the service value chain. This is going to tell us, hey, how do we create, design, maintain our services, the practices we follow to keep them going. Think about how do we fix errors on a service? How do we secure the services and technology? How do we deploy them? We must have guiding principles, the ways and methods we create, manage, and deliver services. How do we manage the services? How do we improve them? The 4 dimensions, we just went over this. Remember, the 4 dimensions has 4 main things. Anytime you think of service management, think of 4 things. The organizations and people that's involved to create and deliver those services, the technology we're going to be using, the external suppliers and partners, and what are the processes we're going to be following. Now that you went over that, you just saw ITIL 4 basically in its entirety. That is the entire ITIL 4 in just 2 diagrams. But there's a lot of terms that's going to go with this. Let's start knocking it out. The first term we're looking at is service management. Well, the whole thing is called IT service management. So let's knock out one of the most important terms. Now, before I get into this, I want to point out something really important. In this presentation, you're going to notice that sometimes on the slides, we have the definitions with these little quotation marks. These quotation marks specifies that this comes out of the ITIL 4 Foundation book by Axelos or PeopleCert, the makers of the actual certification. So anytime you see that, you're going to want to memorize those definitions. If you look through the exam objectives, you're going to see a lot of the BL1. Remember, that's Bloom taxonomy. That's level 1. You're going to want to memorize these definitions. So just don't understand it, but memorize it, because sometimes these are the kinds of words, or I should say definitions, they're going to be using in the missing words question. Let's get started. So the first term we're going to have is this term called service management. Let's read it, then we'll discuss it. Number 1, service management. A set of specialized organizational capabilities for enabling value for customers in the form of services. Let's break this down. First of all, they're customers. In an organization, who's our customers? Well, that's going to be all the end users that we have. All the folks working in the accounting department, the sales department, the management, that's going to be our customers. They're going to see value from the IT department through the services that we're going to be providing. We provide things like security services to secure their data. We're going to provide email to them. We're going to provide support, things like fixing their computers. And of course, we're going to be providing the technology to computers themselves. So what exactly is service management? Well, it's basically a specialized set of capabilities. What are those capabilities? Well, that's going to be all the knowledge and technology and people within the IT department, and we're going to enable value for them. Customers, those users, is going to see value in the IT department in the form of these services that we're provided. So if we don't provide a service, they don't see value. That's what this point is. Customers will see value through the services that we provide to them. Now, I want to really emphasize this word value. We buy things based on value. We do not buy based on price. If price was the most important factor when purchasing something, then the cheapest thing would always be the top selling thing, which is not true. So we buy things based on value. But what exactly is value? Well, value is defined as the perceived benefits, usefulness, so the perceived benefits, usefulness, and the importance of something. Let's break this down. First of all, value is a perception. It is something that is very subjective. It'll be based on your perception of something. This is important. When we go out and we purchase a product, you will see a certain set of values in it, and I will see other values in it. For example, I drive a pickup truck. All right, that's what I drive. Now, I see value in that because it's big, it's safe, carries a lot of stuff. You may not see any value in that. You're going to say it's too big, it's not necessary, and I don't have a lot of stuff to carry. So you don't see value in it. But I see value in it. Every time we look at a single object, we have different perceptions on value. And things that I see value in, you may not see value in it. And this is an important concept. Since value is subjective, we have to remember, and I'm just going to jump down here, that the purpose of the organization, the purpose of what we're doing, is to generate value for our stakeholders. But we have to remember that we need to work with those stakeholders to understand what is the value that they're going to be seeing. That's an important concept to get. In IT, we just don't push out services and never involve our stakeholders to actually ask them, what are you going to get out of this? What is the perceived value you're looking to gain out of this? When we make services, we're not just making it for ourselves, but we're making it for them. I do want to point out that value is co-created. What do we mean by that? Well, if you think about this, Amazon ships you a product, right? So you're getting this amazing service from Amazon that if I buy something at 11 o'clock in the night, it's going to be at my doorstep, believe it or not, at 5 in the morning. That's an amazing value they're doing. It's an amazing service that they offer of delivery. But is it just value that they're getting me? Am I only the one seeing value? No, Amazon sees value from me because I pay them. So value is co-created. It's not a one-way thing. It's not like, well, Amazon is just giving me value. No, I'm giving back Amazon value by purchasing products from them. So keep that in mind. Value is subjective and value is co-created. If you think about it from an IT perspective, users in your company want your services, great. So you give them that particular service. They will then pay you for that service. So you gain value by receiving money, and they gain value by getting the ability to send an email. So we want to work with those stakeholders to understand how they see value. That's one of the key points here. Now, let's go through some terms pretty quickly. In an organization, you're going to have the word stakeholders and various stakeholders. A stakeholder is someone that's impacted by the service. It's someone that's impacted by what we're doing. The first term I want to go over is the word organization. What exactly is this? Well, according to the book, it's a person or a group of people that has its own functions with responsibilities, authorities, and relationships to achieve its objectives. Now, this here, you're going to look at this as just the company that you're working for. Think about this from your entire company. Who's your company? Well, it's a group of people that has its own functions, that has different functions, right? Management, sales, finance. Everybody has different responsibilities and authorities and relationships that you guys have amongst each other and external to achieve its objectives. What's the objectives of your organization? It's probably to make money, but it's also to do other things. For Amazon, it would be to sell products. For AWS, it would be to deliver cloud services. So that's an organization. Now, they can vary in size and complexity. It could be a single person. Hey, I'm a consultant. I'm a single person organization. It could be Amazon with 1.5 million employees. So they vary in size. Now, are they different legal entities? Sure, there's corporations, there's LLCs, for example. So there's different ways that you can organize an organization. Other stakeholders that we're going to have, that we're going to be mentioning are what's called providers and consumers. Now, a service provider is the guy that's providing the actual service. They take on the role of the service provider, the person providing the service. Who's the service provider? If you work in IT, you are the service provider. So the service provider is going to be all the IT personnel within the IT department. They're the ones that's pushing out those services. Now, I do want to point out that sometimes they're external to the customer because sometimes they're like an AWS. For example, we use Microsoft Office 365. None of the IT department here provides email, for example. That's done with an external organization to do that. We use QuickBooks Online. We don't even support that. As an IT person, we don't support that to the accounting department. Intuit provides that. So those are service providers. Consumers, think about consumers as your customers that you have. These are people that's going to be, quote unquote, consuming the service. This is going to be your customer, a person who defines the requirements for a service and takes responsibilities for the outcome of service consumption. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. There's a user, person who utilizes the service. There's a sponsor. This is the person who approves of the service of the budget for the service. Let's go into this here. Most of the time when we think of users, we think of Bob in the accounting department utilizing the accounting application. Correct. That is an absolute true statement. But I want to differentiate between the word customers and users. A user is a person that literally just uses the service. A customer takes this a step above a user. A customer is someone that will define what they want from that service. And if you're saying, isn't it the same person? Yes, it could be the same person. In fact, all three here could be the same person. Think about a one-person accounting department. Let's think about the accounting department. Customers in the accounting department, maybe the heads of the accounting department, will define what they want from their cloud-based accounting software. We need to have payroll, we need to have accounts payable, we need to have accounts receivable. So they're defining the actual requirements for the service that they're looking for. The normal data entry folks that just enters data into their online accounting software would be the user. The head of the accounting department is the person that's going to provide the budget to actually get this software implemented. They're considered the sponsor. Now, last statement here, you notice it says takes responsibility for the outcome of service, of the outcome of the service consumption. Well, at the end of using the accounting software, the customer takes the responsibility. Whatever they get out of it, it's their responsibility. Maybe they're getting out financial reports, maybe they're getting out certain types of payroll out there. Now, other stakeholders we're going to have that's going to be affecting our services is going to be individuals within the employees of the company, all throughout the company. Partners and suppliers. Right now you're working in IT, you have a ton of partners. Microsoft, Cisco, SonicWall, and all the other external vendors that we use. We're going to have investors and shareholders, especially in those publicly traded companies. Stakeholders are going to be people that invest money into that business. If you are highly regulated, like we're a school, we're highly regulated, they determine a lot of the processes we follow. And if there's any social groups that we're entangled with or we're part of, they're going to help change or manipulate some of the services that we have. For example, think about a regulator that says you can't do this, or data has to be encrypted in this way, or data can't flow across a certain boundary. They all affect the way services are created and delivered. Now, what exactly is a service and a product? Well, let's define the word service. I know I've been mentioning the word service quite often, but what exactly is a service defined in the world of ITIL? A service is a means of enabling value, co-creation by facilitating outcomes that customers want to achieve without having to manage costs and risks. A lot to take in there. Let's break this down. So first of all, it's enabling value co-creation. I mentioned this earlier. When you provide a service, it's not a one-way thing. It's co-creation of value. I give you a service, for example, I'm going to provide this video to you. So that's a service to you, right? You're watching this, you're gaining value from learning ITIL. I'm gaining value by you watching it, and you clicking on that like button would be really, really cool to do that. So you're giving me value by clicking on the like button, and I'm giving you value by you watching the video. In IT security is a service we offer. We give them the service of securing their data, and they give us value by paying for that IT services. So that's why it says co-creation. Without the customers, the outcomes that they want, without the customer having to manage the key word here is specific costs and risks. We manage the specific costs. The customer pays one big payment. They just give us IT budget, $1 million, right? The company pays $1 million for the IT budget. The specific costs of Bob's salary, the help desk for $40,000. The specific cost of Microsoft licensing for $100,000. The specific cost of that Cisco router for $10,000. They don't need to manage that. They don't need to know that. The risk of managing IT is huge. The risk of the service dropping, the risk of Bob being out one day, the risk of bad weather taking out our electricity and the server going down. They don't need to manage that. The easiest way to see this in a more simpler example is dry cleaning. All right, I picked up this shirt from the dry cleaner. Why did I go to the dry cleaner? Well, because I don't want to dry clean it myself, so I'm just going to purchase the service of dry cleaning. When I go to a dry cleaner, what is the outcome that I want to achieve? Nice clean shirt, right? That's what I want, but I don't want to manage the cost of hiring someone to dry clean. I don't want to have a place that I have to buy the equipment to dry clean it, hire someone to utilize the equipment, maybe the risk of burning myself, the risk of overspending. I just want to go in, give my shirt, pay one fee and walk out. So I don't want to manage specific costs and risks, right? All I want is this outcome of a nice clean shirt. So remember something, value is co-created and customer wants it because they don't want to manage specific costs and risk of managing that service or providing that service. A product, it's a configuration of an organization or resources designated to offer value for a consumer. Now, let's take a look at this. Configuration of the organizational resources. If we're looking at one of the products that IT offer is email, for example, right? We have to configure the organizational resources in a way, we got to configure the people, the technology in a way to offer this to a customer for it to provide value. A bunch of people sitting around and a bunch of servers on a desk and a bunch of software and boxes doesn't really do anything. But if I take those people and show them how to fix this server, install this software, now we have a product that we can offer to our customers. Now, services that an organization provides are based on one or more of the products that it has. So, for example, this is important, based on one or more of its products. The whole service of efficient communications may include email, text messaging, video conferencing. So we have so many different products that we're now going to bundle into one amazing service. That's the way you're going to see this. Service offering, another term. First of all, understand that a service offering is nothing more than a formal description of one or more of these services designed to address the needs of a targeted consumer group. A major service offering like efficient communication is going to bundle many things together. All right, it's one or more services. It could be all of the services you're offering, or it could just be a sum of the services. If you think of things like AWS and Amazon may have cloud storage, which is not just one of their services, but it could be 5 or 6 different ones. Cloud-based systems. Amazon has the ability for you to have a blank system. They have one that's fully configured. They have one that comes with specific pieces of software. So it depends on the segment. So service providers like AWS, like us working in IT, present their services to a consumer in form of the service offering, which describes one or more of the services that they're offering. Now, service offering is easy to understand because you can just go to any cloud-based provider like AWS. You can see all the different services that they're offering. In an internal IT department, what we give out to the customers, what we're offering them, whether it's an accounting software, whether it's help desk, whether it's just this service of fixing their equipment, their physical desktops, and so on, we have to have that listing of services that we can offer them. What kind of service includes? It could include goods. Sometimes Dell may lease workstations to you, so that's physical goods. It could be access to resources or particular data, or it could be a service action. Sometimes we have external help desks. So if we purchase a service action, that'll just give us that access to that external help desk. Now, service relations. Now, I want to point out here that value creation is more than just a service. You will collaborate with consumers to perform these things. A service with no customer has no relation. When we provide a service, we depend on other companies to do it. It's a whole bundle of relations, and I'll show you this in a relation model in a second. Service relationships are created between two or more organizations to co-create value, and I'll show you guys this here. I'm going to show you guys what this means in a second. There's a nice diagram I have coming up on this. In a service relations, organization will take on the position of either a service provider or a service consumer. Hold on. I'm going to come to this here in a second. The roles are not mutually exclusive. An organization is both a provider and a consumer of a number of services. So if you're providing a service, yes, you are providing it. I am giving out email services to my customer, but am I consuming services? Yes, you'll see what I mean. There is this thing called a service relationship. It's a cooperation between service providers and consumers. Let me show you guys the diagram. Let me show you. This is what I mean. When you look at a service, single organization providing a service, is it one thing? No, it's one organization dependent on another. Microsoft provides the service of service software. We utilize that on our physical servers. Dell provides the physical servers. Remember, service provisions and service consumption can be the utilization of goods like a physical server, or to resources like a piece of software. We're going to utilize organization A, maybe it's Microsoft, providing software to Dell. Dell then provides the server with the software to me, organization C, and then we provide email to our customer. So it's not a single thing. Not only are we providing services, but we're also consuming services to provide service to others. That's the way you see that. So this falls under this concept of what's called a service relationship and a service relationship model. So service provisions, activities performed by an organization. The consumption of the service is we utilizing it. And this whole relationship model where we're all working together to jointly provide services to different businesses out there. Now, what exactly, when you're thinking about service management, what exactly are we thinking about in terms of achieving what somebody wants? People want to achieve a certain outcome. They want to be able to communicate efficiently. They want to be able to send that email. All right, and it provides value to them when it gives me the outcome I want. It removes the cost and the risk associated with managing the service. Think about this. Why did I go and I outsourced to Office 365 my emails? Why did I do that? Well, because it gives me the ability to send emails. It removed the individual cost of managing service. It removed the risk of managing and upkeeping service. This scale I'm looking at is great because now this weighs more on value for me. I want to remove things like risk that's introduced. If I want to do my own email, I'm going to introduce risk in my organization. I'm going to introduce costs in my organization. It might affect me even getting my own email. So if you're looking at this scale here, this balance here that you see in this scale is when you're doing a service, you want to remove costs, you want to remove risk, or at least lower them, and support what we're looking for. Now, there are two terms you're going to want to know really in depth for your exam. Memorize these definitions. And that's going to be the term of output and outcome. Let's define them. Output, a tangible or intangible deliverable of an activity. Outcome, a result for a stakeholder enabled by one or more outputs. Exam, memorize. Multiple outputs gives you the outcome. It could be a single one also. Let me give you a few examples. When you take this course, the output of this course is you will get a certificate of completion that, hey, I finished this course. The outcome of this course is not just a certificate from us and the certificate of ITIL when you take your exam, but the outcome is a higher salary. When you take this course, you're going to get a training manual, you're going to get practice tests, you're going to get certificates and a certification. 4 different outputs of the course gives you the outcome of a higher salary because now you're ITIL certified. People want the outcome, but in order to get the outcome, you must have multiple outputs. So don't forget that. Outputs is individual things. They could be tangible or intangible. And the outcome is really what you're looking for. That's more than one outputs. Remember this term for your exam. All right. The other one here we have is service cost. Let's go through these terms quickly. It's the amount of money spent on a specific activity. This is what the service will actually cost. Now, when you're looking at costs from different perspectives, all right, they come in 2 main costs. Cost removed from the customer by the service and cost imposed on the customer. So think about this. When I went to Office 365, the cost that was removed was me hosting my own servers, me buying the server software, me configuring the server. These are all costs that's removed. But then I have to pay Microsoft per user. So that's the cost imposed by me. Hopefully the imposed cost is a lot less than the removed cost. If not, then there's not much value in that service. Now, from our perspective, it's the cost of fulfilling the requirements. This is from a consumer cost. From our perspective, it's really how much money we're going to spend buying, if we're the one providing that email, buying the server, buying the software, paying people to configure it. The cost to fulfill that. Risk. Well, what exactly is risk, first of all? So risk is a possible event that may cause harm or loss or make it more difficult to achieve objectives. So first of all, risk is possible. It's something that may cause harm or loss. Think about a bad weather bringing down electricity, so none of your IT services work. Think about important personnel being out or quitting. Think about technology failure, right? Random things just failing and server dying, software going out of whack. Now, what is it we want? There are 2 kinds of risk here that we should talk about. Now, first of all is from a consumer perspective. When a customer purchases a service from us, we're going to remove it from them, but we're also going to add it to them. What do I mean by that? When I purchase Office 365, the risk of managing the server, the risk of maintaining emails, the risk of misconfiguration, that's all removed when I get Office 365. But then there's risk imposed that Office 365 can go down. Hopefully the imposed risk is lower than the risk of individually managing these things. Now, consumers can reduce these risks by making sure that the requirements for the service is met by the provider, communicating what we feel is important, like uptime would be important, making sure the service provider has a necessary resource. Just don't go buy cloud services from some random company. Get it from a company that has a lot of resources, such as Microsoft, to accomplish this particular task. Now, I do want to point out that risk is more than likely going to be negative when people think of risk, but there is a thing as positive risk called opportunities. Your exam is not going to go into that too much, but just remember, risk could be positive or negative. 2 famous terms for everybody's ITIL exam, and this has been an ITIL since the beginning of time. It's called utility and warranty. Let's see if we can break this down. What is utility? It's the functionality offered by a product or service to meet a need. Summarizes what the service does, and it determines fit for purpose. Okay? Warranty, assurance that a product or service will meet the agreed requirements. Summarizes how it performs and determines whether it's fit for use. Easiest way to look at this is think of a big screen TV. All right, the utility. Well, what's the functionality? Well, it's 4K, it has great sound, it's a 55-inch TV. Summarizing, right? So what does it do? Well, it displays a great picture on a big screen. Is it fit for the purpose? Well, I'm looking for a large screen TV that fits on this particular wall that's 60 inches. So I need a 55-inch. 65-inch wouldn't fit. So it fits my purpose. Now, how will it meet the agreed warranty? Is it going to break in 2 days? No. Is there a quote-unquote warranty? If it breaks, can I return it to the store? Yeah, that's the warranty. It's how is it going to perform? Is it going to show? Is it going to break? Is it going to have dead pixel? Is it fit for the purpose? Now, you have to understand that when customers purchase a service, they want both. They want to make sure that it is fit for use and is it fit for the purpose. Let's go back to us in IT providing the service of email. What is the utility of email? Well, the ability to send email, receive email, archive the email, the ability to mark email as important or not important. That's the utility, all right? If you cannot mark emails for important or you can't archive emails for a year, it may not fit my purpose. If my regulatory requirements marks that I must archive emails for a year and you don't have that requirement, well, it's not fit for purpose here because you're not giving me what I need. The functionality doesn't do what I want. Now, the other one here is, does it have the right warranty? Does it perform right? Will you meet the agreement? The agreement is you need to store my email for a year. You need to be able to send and receive my email. And is it always going down? I need my email functioning all the time. If your email servers are always down, you can't meet your agreed of maintaining it for 1 year, then your warranty kind of sucks. That means it's not fit for use. Exam, remember something for me. Notice term, fit for purpose. That means does it have the requirements you want? Is it fit for use? Are you going to be able to meet those requirements? The easiest way I tell my students to remember this, because this can get a little confusing. The way I tell my students to remember this is never use a TV without a warranty. Got it? All right. The TV represents the utility, and you should never purchase a TV without a warranty. Why? Because you should never use a TV without a warranty. That's the way I see it. Never use something without a warranty. So fit for use is warranty. The purpose is the utility. Now, all right, let's take a look here. Next section, moving on here, is going to be the 4 dimensions of service management. Let's cover these pretty quickly. This is the 4 dimensions of service management. When you're thinking of a service itself, a service is not just one thing. It's multiple things it takes to provide value. So let's take a look at this. Let's break this down. What do we want to provide to our customers? Value. In the form of what? Products and services, right? For example, email is that service where the value they get is efficient communication. That's the value they get. How do they get it? With the service of email. But for us to provide this service, we're going to need people. We're going to need technology. We're going to need a process for these people and technology to follow. And we're going to need partners and suppliers. Think about this. Who's the people in providing this service? Well, the help desk, the server administrator, the network administrator, the people. What's the technology? We're going to use a Microsoft Exchange server. We're going to utilize Dell physical servers. We're going to utilize Microsoft on Windows Server. We need to put something on there. We need to utilize SQL databases and so on. Those are the technology. Well, a bunch of people on a bunch of servers, on a bunch of software sitting, people standing around with a bunch of software on the floor and servers on the floor really doesn't do anything. There has to be some kind of process that these people can follow to put the server in the rack, to install the server, to bring the internet line in, to configure it. That's value streams and processes. Did we make that server? No, we purchased it from Dell. We don't make server software. We purchased that from Windows, from Microsoft. We don't make operating systems. We got that from Microsoft. Those are partners and suppliers. So for us to provide this service, we need people, we need technology, we need processes, and we need partners. And there's a lot of things that can affect all of this, right? There's the environmental factor. Do we have the right environment for it? There's economical. Do we even have the money for this? There's social factors, maybe social things out there in the world that can affect how we select. Technology factors. AI is big now. Cloud computing is, of course, is big. Political ramifications, both internally and externally. And of course, legal ramifications like regulations can affect the servers we use, the type of software we use, the processes we follow, and even the type of people we hire. That is the 4-dimension in a full nutshell. So when you think of a service, you're thinking of many things. Let's get a quick overview of this here. Now, so the 4 dimensions, they represent perspectives, which is relevant to the whole service value system, all right? It's basically the entirety of the service value chain. And I'm going to come more to this coming up in a few minutes. Now, all of these things are constrained by external factors, right? People, technology, value streams, partners, they're all constrained by external factors. For example, regulations or legal factors can constrain how we hire people, technology we use, and so on. Let's go into this. The first thing here we'll talk about is organizations and people. Now, well, who are the organizations and people? Well, the way an organization is structured and the culture will play a role in how we deliver, right? The people of itself, the way the company is structured, the way the company is managed is going to play an important role in how services are delivered. Is it structured in a way that is well managed and defined that supports our strategy? Don't forget, when you're managing people, you also need to keep their skills updated. Now, I want you guys to really pay attention here because consideration should be paid not only to the skills and competencies of team and individual members, but also the management style. Yes, it is important to ensure that we have the right people in the right places, but it's ensure that we have the right managers to manage these people. Managers is the one who really determines whether people are successful or not. ITIL is not going to go in, especially in ITIL 4 Foundation, it's not going to go into this thing a lot. It's not going to go into this management style, how to manage people. It's beyond the scope of that. But just remember, people is important when managing any service. Everyone should have an understanding of their involvement. Every people in the service department, in the IT department, should have an understanding of the value that they are creating. So everyone should have an understanding of their involvement towards creating value for the organization, its customers. Everybody, in my opinion, plays equal value. You can have an amazing server administrator, but if the network administrator kind of suck, the emails will be heavily delayed as the network is congested. If the help desk personnel kind of suck, customers are going to get upset because there's no support for the system or support takes longer. The other thing here we have to do is manage the technology. When we provide a service, we got to include all the technology that comes with it. All right. Now, I kept mentioning the word technology, but I want you guys to remember something. That it's not just technology, it's information also. This dimension is called information and technology. Information is the knowledge base it takes to manage technology. So this includes information and knowledge necessary for the management of services. Remember, you have an amazing people, but if they don't have the right information, the right knowledge, they're not going to be able to configure those servers correctly. They're not going to be able to encrypt your emails. They're not going to be able to set up archiving systems. Information created, managed, and used in the course of service provision and consumption. As we provide services, as we push out services, as we manage and delete services, we're going to gain knowledge. We're going to learn information. So we have to manage this. Now, technologies that support will include, we need to have some kind of workflow system. We need to have a knowledge base and inventory, communication, analytical tools. Some of these things, nothing here to memorize for your exam, but keep in mind something as simple as just having an inventory system of all the technology we use. That's going to be important. When you are managing information and technology, ask yourself a couple of questions. What information is managed by what service? So what information is coming out of the different services? What supporting information and knowledges are needed to transport and manage these services? And how will information be protected, managed? Be protected, manage, archive, and dispose of. This is important because if you think about this, in the world of managing technology, there's a lot of important information that we learn of. This email is important. That email is not important. This data file needs to be encrypted. This one doesn't. We need to make sure that we manage that correctly. We don't want this type of information being lost. And another thing is certain information will need to be archived for specific periods of time. Certain regulations will make that mandatory. One thing that affects information and technology is the culture of the people. The culture of the organizations really affects the technology we use. Why? Because some organization likes utilizing new stuff while others may not. Some organization just utilizes old technology and is very slow to upgrade. Some organization now is heavily into AI and some is just resisting it. The culture of the organization will determine that. Another thing here we have is partners and suppliers. This includes the organization's relationship with other companies that we have. I'm not going to spend too long on this because this is easy to understand. Well, partners and suppliers are going to be all of your Dell and Microsoft and AWS and Google and Apple and whoever more you guys use to purchase your equipment and services from. When you have partners and suppliers, you're going to have contracts with them that you're going to have to manage these partners and suppliers. Now, a couple of things here. Focusing on core competencies, using partners and suppliers to provide others. If you can do it, you don't necessarily need an external provider. I know in today's world, we're moving away from this and trying to just outsource everything. Organization may choose to depend on as much as possible of on their own resources, using as partners as little as possible. Some organizations are different. Some of them will, like my organization, we don't want to provide anything. We prefer to outsource most of it. When it comes to partners and suppliers, there's three forms of them. There's goods. This is selling goods to the organization. Think of Dell providing you that server. There's service delivery. Delivers a service to an organization, such as cloud computing, like AWS. Then there's service partnership. Value co-creators that works with you to supply a service. This is a good example of this is outsource IT. For example, you may have a lot of server and network administrators, but you don't have no help desk. You outsource that entire function to another organization. Now, I mentioned earlier, you have people, you have technology, but having people in technology is great, but if you don't have a process for them to work together to provide a service, you're kind of out of luck. So we need something called a value stream and a process. Concerned with how the many parts of the organization working in a unified. So this is keyword. Unified, when we take technologies and we take people and we unify them, they need to follow a process. We're going to say, to be unified, follow this process. This is what you guys should be doing in order to configure the server in a coordinated way to enable value co-creation. Now, what activities the organization will follow, how would they organize, and how the organization ensures it's enabling value with the stakeholders. There's two words I want to point out here, something called efficiently and effectively. Efficient generally means cheap and fast. How can we get it done as fast as possible and as a little bit as money as possible? And effective is how good it is. Everybody wants things that are efficient and are effective. You want to have the cheapest price, fastest possible way of doing it, and it's super great. It functions well. It's highly effective. But you want it the cheapest and the fastest way possible. So when we're looking to create a process, we want to create processes that are highly effective, in other words, gets the job done, but the process mustn't be too expensive or take too long. One of the ways we could do that is by providing what's called a value stream. Now, a value stream is a series of steps the organization will undertake to create and deliver products and services. So I got this easy one here. You want to get certified. So what is the value stream of getting certified through Technical Institute of America? Well, you're going to give us a call. You're going to get the course info. Hopefully you like it. You're going to register for the course. You're going to attend the course. And you're certified. That is the value stream. So if you notice, it kind of looks like a flow diagram, right? Like a process flow diagram or a flow chart. That's really what it is. So a value stream is just the steps we take to create and deliver the products and services. So every organization needs to have these value streams. This helps us to identify what we are going to consider to be useful and useless things. When you start to put everything that you're doing in a value stream like this, you start to see this step is not important. This step is taking too long. So this helps us to look at maybe we're doing things that doesn't give any value. Maybe we're doing things that provides real value. Maximize value-added activities and remove non-value activities to reduce waste. Now, automation. Anytime we create processes, we want to automate as many things as possible. So that's going to help us, especially using things like AI. Now, terms. We talked about value stream, but what's a process? A process is a set of interrelated or interacting activities that transform inputs into outputs. So a process takes one or more inputs and turns them into an output. Brushing your teeth is a process. What are the inputs to brushing your teeth? Well, toothpaste and toothbrush and mouthwash. Now, what's the process of brushing your teeth? Well, you're going to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, you're going to brush your teeth, then you're going to flush out with the mouthwash. What is the output? Fresh breath and no cavities. Everything we do follows a process. In IT, we need to look at everything we're doing, and we got to say, that's the process of configuring that. So we're going to take everything, all of the technology, all the people that we have, and we're going to say, follow this particular process. So processes defines the arrangement of actions and their dependencies. Organizations should examine how they perform work. We should do this. Look at the work you're doing in your company. Can you do a value stream? Can you do a process flow of that? Look at what you're doing and see, are you doing activities that just doesn't make any sense, that doesn't help the company move forward? This dimension answers the following questions when it comes to delivering service. What is the generic delivery model of that service? What are the value streams of that service? Who or what performs that particular service? External factors. When you're looking at the 4 dimensions of service management, we just covered all 4 there. When you're looking at these external 4 dimensions, you got to think of things that can affect them externally, that can create a high degree of volatility and uncertainty. These are constraints that are imposed on your services. And again, I'm talking about these things here. I'm going right around this chart. I'm talking about these things. These things that you're looking at here actually has a name. They're called, this framework that goes around it, it's called PESTLE, the PESTLE model. P-E-S-T-L-E. And I'm not going to go in depth into this. You don't need to know it for your exam, but it's something you should consider. Think about when we're providing services in an organization. Just an easy one like a legal factor. What's happening in regulations has a drastic constraint on maybe the technology we can use. Maybe we can't use that technology because it doesn't have a certain bit strength encryption. We can't utilize that particular vendor because that vendor is not within the country and they can't store data. We can't do this process in this way because the regulation says it must be done in this particular way. We can't hire people without certain degrees or certifications because regulations doesn't want you to have that. That's just regulation. So keep in mind that there are external factors that has a drastic effect on it. All right. Okay, next thing up we're going to take a look at is going to be the ITIL service value system. So we looked at the 4 dimensions. What is the service value system? Well, this I mentioned is the entire ITIL in one big glance. It takes everything in the ITIL books and puts it together in one nice diagram. So this here will describe how all the components and activities of the company works together. Notice all the components and activities that work together to create value. We need to provide value. The output here is value. The input is the demand. Each organization's SVS, and you have one, I have one, every company has one. Every organization's SVS interacts with other organizations forming an ecosystem. My organization provides training. Okay? You create the opportunity by telling, hey, Andrew, I want some training in PMP. I want some training in CISSP. I want some training in ITIL. You give me that. I have my principles, my governance, the way I create my courses, my practices, my continual improvement. And then I give you value. Then you take the training you got from me and you improve your IT, and then you provide value to your customer. Then your customer takes value from you and provides more value for their customers, and just never ends. That's the whole point of that. Now, this thing tries to prevent the organization silos. When you look at this, I want you guys to look at this, that this is not individual things. It's not like people creating the service and the service value chain is different than people governing it or the guiding principles. It tries to unify all of the things we do in a company to let people know that to provide the right value, we need to be a unified business. People see value on the total of everything. If you provide a service to someone and you have an amazing part of something, but one part sucks, everything sucks. Just the way people are. For example, I can provide a great training, but if there's one misspelled word in this presentation, everybody will put in the comments below or let me know that, Andrew, you misspelled this word on this slide and this training sucks. So it's people look at things from the entirety of something. If this video looks good and I look good, but the audio kind of sucks, you're going to probably let me know that. Now, let's go through some of the parts of it. What are the guiding principles? These are recommendations that guide us on how we work. Regardless of how the company or what people work there or the goals of the business, our guiding principles shouldn't change. We'll come back to this later. The governance. This is going to be the actual way we manage the structure we manage it. The service value chain. These are what's called interrelated activities that you will perform to deliver that service. We will expand this later. Practices. These are many things, and this is the majority of ITIL. These are many things that we're going to follow, individual parts within IT that we're going to be doing, such as managing a help desk, managing information security, managing business continuity. Those are going to be practices. And then we need a way to always consistently improve what we're doing. Now, let's go over this here. What are opportunity, demands, and value? Well, opportunities and demands are inputs to this model. An opportunity, first of all, a demand is what your customer is asking for. An opportunity is something that they may not be asking for, but you look in the market and say, there's a big demand right now for AI services that we should be providing. There's a big opportunity. Nobody's asking us for it, or maybe they're starting to ask us for it. So we have to get into that. Opportunities are options or possibilities to provide value. Demands are needs or desires that they want probably right now. I want to talk to you guys up. The first one here is called the guiding principles. Let's go into this. The ITIL guiding principles. In life, we have principles that is taught to us by our parents. Our mother or our father taught us principles that we're going to follow, like don't kill people, try to be honest. That's going to be guiding principles. Organizations should have their own guiding principles. ITIL is going to give us the guiding principles. The great thing about guiding principles is this: I go through life, my guiding principles shouldn't change. At no point should I become a killer. At no point should I start lying. It doesn't matter what situation I'm in. And that's the same thing here. These guiding principles should not change regardless of its change in mission, goals, type of work, or company management structure. Your guiding principles should stay the same. They're universal and they're enduring. Now, ITIL gives us these guiding principles. Why? Because it's going to encourage, these guiding principles are going to encourage us and support what we're doing. A lot of these guiding principles comes from a variety of different frameworks. Agile, DevOps, COBIT, some of them. Now, companies should integrate multiple methods. Come down in a few minutes. What are the 7 guiding principles? Let's take a look at them. The first one up, focus on value. Then start where you are. Progress iteratively with feedback. Collaborate and promote visibility. Think and work holistically. Keep it simple and practical. Optimize and automate. I want you guys to know these guiding principles in-depth, memorize them. Actually, not in-depth, at least memorize them and know them. High level, you are taking foundation. Maybe in another certification, you would go more in-depth. Focus on value. Let's take a look at this first principle. All actions done by the organization should link back directly or indirectly to value. Let's break this down. Every single thing that's being done in any employee in your organization, every action they take, every task they do, can that be linked back to some kind of value added thing they're doing to whatever service or products you're selling? Think about this. A help desk technician sitting down, talking on the phone to one of the employees, is that a value added activity? Yeah, because that employee has a downtime and this technician is helping that person. These are the types of things you need to do. You need to look through, if you're in charge of IT, look at all the tasks, look at all the actions the IT employees are taking and say to yourself, are these actions actually providing value, whether it's directly or indirectly, to the output of services that we're offering? Now, value itself, remember, value is not something that is highly objective. It's subjective. And some people may see it in the form of revenue. It could come in the form of customer loyalty, even lowering costs or growth opportunities. So always remember, every action, does it lead to value? Next one up here we have is going to be start from where you are. Anytime you try to improve a service, don't throw the whole thing out and try to rebuild the whole thing. Try to improve right where you are right now. Don't start over thinking about, do not start over without thinking about what is already there to leverage. Sometimes when you're improving a service, it's best just to look at what you're currently doing. What can I leverage? What can we get rid of? What can we add in? How can we improve this? So when improving, it may seem sensible to remove what's been done, but it's probably not best to do that. More than likely, it's best to start from where you are. The other one here we have is progress iteratively with feedback. So let's take a look at this. Number one, anytime you do a task, don't do an entire task and then ask for feedback at the end. For example, when you're building a piece of software, don't build the whole software and then go and get feedback from your customer. Maybe you can build parts of it and show them and get feedback as you're building it. That way you know what you're building is actually good or bad. So don't do everything at once. Organize work into smaller, more manageable sections. Focus in on each effort. So if you're just designing, just design. If you're programming, just program. If you're testing, just test them. This will be sharper and easier to maintain. Use improvement iterations that can be sequential. So every time you finish an iteration of a product or an increment of a product, get feedback on whether that product is functionally or not. Break up major initiatives. Sometimes when you have a big task to do, it's kind of daunting to do it. But if you break it up into smaller chunks, it's not that difficult. Seeking and using feedback before and throughout after each iteration. That's the whole point of this guiding principle, is to get feedback as much as possible. Collaborate and promote visibility. I want to just jump right here to this. Inclusion is generally a better policy than exclusion. Anytime we do a task in an organization, anytime we create and manage services in a business, let's bring people in. Let's collaborate with all the customers, the team members, the project managers, the product managers, the help desk technicians. Bring people in. You have to make sure that the right people are in the right roles will always lead to a better buy-in. More important, this increases the likelihood of success in the long term. You see, think about this. If you're making a piece of software and you're not collaborating and bringing in customers, you may never get the feedback you need to determine if your software is successful. When it comes to visibility, as you're producing the product, it's important to show them what you're doing to let them tell you whether it's good or bad. If you study Agile, you realize a lot of this sounds Agile, a lot of this does come from there. So we talked about collaboration. It's always better to try not to isolate people. We don't like silo. We like people working together. The entire IT department must work together, and we need to bring stakeholders in as much as possible. When you see IT, how do you see it? I hope you see it as one big system and you're not seeing it as just individual parts. You as a manager must think holistically, entirely. The output of an organization to itself, its customers, and other stakeholders will diminish unless it works in a unified way. Every single part of the IT department, every single part within your company must work in a way to produce adequate products and service. I mentioned something earlier. If you produce an amazing service, but parts of it doesn't function well, customers' perception will drop. Understand that it's all one thing. Understanding of how all the parts integrated must work together. I'll give you a good example of this. We have the Verizon Fios internet line. Amazing, amazing product. It is always fast. It 99.99% of the time works. But Verizon has a big issue. Their customer service absolutely sucks. They have the worst. If you want to get a heart attack, call Verizon. The point is, they're not thinking holistically. They're putting a lot of effort into service delivery. They're putting a lot into service uptime and keeping the service and maintaining it. But when a customer calls them, their customer support sucks. And my perception of Verizon is not very good. You as the manager of Verizon need to think holistically. Is all parts of my service good? One guiding principle we should always be following is this right here. Is keep it practical, keep it simple. Never look for complex ways. Always try to use the least amount of number of steps to achieve something. If a process, service, or action or metric fails to provide any value, remember, notice it says process, it says service, it says action. If you're doing something, if you're following a process, if a service is not doing anything, it's not achieving any real value, eliminate it, get rid of it. Keep it simple, keep it practical. When designing or improving service management, start with an uncomplicated approach. Start with something simple and maybe you add things into it as you progress on. When designing, managing, or operating practices, be mindful of conflicting objectives. What do we mean by this? Well, as you're creating and managing service, sometimes some of them will remove value or lower value on certain things. So you got to say, well, maybe we shouldn't do that, or maybe we should manage that differently. Optimize and automate. ITIL promotes automation. Now we have a lot of AI tools at our disposal, from things like ChatGPT and AI chatbots and AI agents and so on, to help us automate. Now, it says optimize and automate. It just doesn't say automate. We want to maximize the value of work carried out by the humans and technical, yes. Optimization means to make something as effective and as useful. When we optimize, we remove unnecessary resources. We reduce the cost of it, basically. We increase how fast we can get it done. Automation refers to the use of technology to perform steps or a series of steps correctly and consistently with limited, keyword, or no human interaction. That's the key here. Take a service you have, reduce the cost to produce that service severely, and then human interaction, try to remove it. This way, the service performs by itself. You probably think we're all going to be out of a job, but remember this for your test. Before an activity can be automated, make sure we optimize it as much as possible. Okay, those are the guiding principles. The other part of the service value system is governance. We only have one slide on this. Each company is managed by a governing body. This is going to be their board of directors, highly regulators, their CEO. It's a person, it's a group of people that's going to be held accountable. They're going to be held accountable for how complex and all the compliances that we follow. The governing body should be doing three activities. They should evaluate how the company is doing against some kind of standard. Maybe they have particular goals. Maybe they have regulatory things they have to meet. They should direct the actions within the business. They should say, let's go here, let's make this goal, let's remove this goal. And of course, they should monitor it to make sure that it doesn't go out of compliance or doesn't go away from its goals. Governance is big in terms of the big overview of company governance or corporate governance. This here is something we want to be familiar with for our exam, but we don't want to go into this. It's not really on the test. Something that is on the exam is going to be the service value chain. Now, I want to this part here people don't get. So you know what, let me show you this. So this here is a service value system, right? The service, oh boy. The service value system. This is what we've been covering, right? So we covered the guiding principles. We covered governance. We're going to talk about this here. Then we're going to do continual improvement. Practices will come at the end. You see this? This is not one thing. The service value chain, although it looks like one thing, is actually a bigger thing. This service value chain is this thing. The service value chain has a lot of components. It's not a single thing. It's plan, engage, improve. This gives us products and services in this center here. All right, so we're going to get more in depth into this. So what exactly is it? Well, it's plan, engage, improve, deliver and support, obtain and build, design and transition. The service value chain is the part of the SVS, service value system, that deals with the actually designing of a service, building the service, and delivering that service. Like this is where the core of the creation and pushing out of a service actually happens. Okay, so let's get into these components. Now you're going to get one question on your exam on one of these components. Just understand what they are. You don't need to go in depth into them for the ITIL Foundation. So they have 6 activities. We just mentioned plan, improve, engage, design and transition, obtain and build, deliver and support. And this uses a combination of the 34 ITIL practices to turn them into outputs. Now, we're not going to cover all 34 practices. It's not needed in ITIL, but we will cover some of these ITIL practices. And just for your knowledge, this is the practices they're talking about here, which will come to towards the end of this. The activities represents the stages an organization takes in the creation of value. Each activity converts into outputs. Yes, if you look at the service value system, you'll notice that the output of the entire service value system is value, as is the entire SVS. All activities are interconnected with each activity receiving and performing triggers from each. Now, I want to point out that when you look at this, I think I have another picture here. When you look at the service value system, here's a better picture. I want to just point out a couple of things here. You see this center triangle? It's overlapped with improve. That means you improve your products and services, you improve how you engage, you improve all parts of this center triangle box thing, cube. You plan. Notice how planning. Plan overlaps with engage. It overlaps with product service. It overlaps with the box. Planning and in improvement, you plan to improve. Everything here is not separated. They're all considered one piece, one thing. What are some rules here? The SVS, Service Value System, has some rules, all right? All incoming and outgoing exchanges with parties, external, through the chains are performed through engage. So what we mean is this. Anything that's external goes through here. All new resources are gained through obtain and build. So anytime we gain servers, people, that's obtain and build. Planning at all levels is performed via plan. Yes. Improvement is initiated through improvement. Sure. Demand, products and services and value are not part of the service value chain. So even though this diagram has demand, it has products and services and value, that's not part of the service value chain. It's just these 6 activities. Demand is what starts up the whole chain. Products and services is what we output to the entire chain. And the outcome they're going to get is going to be this value that the customers want. Let's go into these 6 parts. Don't kill yourself. You don't need to memorize and get in the in-depth, itty-gritty stuff about them. Let's go through them. Number 1, planning. Ensure that a shared understanding of the vision, current status, and improvement direction for all 4 dimensions and products and services across the organization. Easy enough, a shared understanding. When you make a plan, you're creating a shared understanding of where we're going to go. We're planning of how we're going to improve our products. We plan of how we're going to create things, how we're going to hire people, how are we going to decommission a service, how are we going to add new services. We must continuously improve our products. In this section, we're going to talk about continual improvement. Actually, after this, we're going to talk about continual improvement. Next section in the course. But you guys know something, if we don't consistently improve our products and services and practices, we will become obsolete. So consistent improvement across all the dimensions, across all parts of the service value system. Engage. It is important that as we create products, as we create services, as we deliver them, as we manage them, as we check them, we fix them, and we optimize them, that we engage our customers in it. We need to have a good understanding before we even create a service. For example, what are the needs of the customer? The transparency and continuous engagement forms good relationship. When we engage with our stakeholders, we increase our relationship. Now, there's three things in the center, that cube: design and transition, obtain and bill, and deliver and support. All right? So let's go here. The first one up, design and transition. To ensure that products and services continue to meet the stakeholders for quality, cost, and time to market. Yes, we need to design services that are good quality. We need to make sure that they're optimally cost and they can reach market quick. In other words, it needs to be cheap, needs to be fast, and it needs to have good quality. That's everything what everybody's looking for. So when we design a service, we need to make sure it meets those requirements. You also want to be able to, when you transition a service from, maybe it's going from designing to execution, or designing to programming, you have to make sure that it's cost effective. Obtain and build. In the center of the chain, when we have a service, do we build the service internally or do we obtain it externally? Parts of a service I'm talking about. So, for example, you're doing email to your customers. Do you build out your whole email servers and system, or do you obtain it from Office 365? A component of a service, maybe certain security services, do you do them internally, you build them out, or do you obtain them from outside? The purpose is this: to ensure components are available when and where they're needed, and they meet certain specifications. And then deliver and support. Ensure services are delivered and support according to the expectations. Maybe you have a service level agreement with your customers on this. At the end of the day, we have to push out that service. We have to give it to them and support it to make sure they get what they're looking for. All right, that's going to be the service value system. The next one here I have, the next section of this course is going to be continual improvement. Now, you're going to have one question on your exam that deals with continual improvement and the model of continual improvement. This model, I want you guys to memorize this model. You got to memorize these steps. What is the vision? Where are we now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? Take action. Did we get there yet? And to keep this momentum going. We're going to go through this right now. I'm going to keep it high level because you're going to get only one question. It's not going to be very complex. Just memorize these steps before you walk in to your exam room. And we're going to go through this. Now, this model, this applies to the SVSs in its entirety. Every part of your organization, in fact, your entire life can follow this, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute, should follow this in its entirety. Let me go through it quickly and I'll show you how easy this is. Now, I'm going to give you a little goal I've been working on. Then I saw the doctor earlier this year and he says, Andrew, you're 220 pounds. I want you to be at 200 pounds. So what is the vision? The vision is to be healthier at a lower weight. That's number one, right? What do I want to be? I want to be healthier. What is the vision to be healthier? What are some of the goals to lose 20 pounds? All right. Where are we right now? Well, I'm 220 pounds. That's my baseline assessment. Where do I want to be? Well, according to the doctor, I want to be at 200 pounds. Is that a definable target? Yes, it is, 200. So I know I got 220, and I know that I need to be at 200. How do we get there? What's the improvement plan? Well, cut down the beer drinking, no cake, no sweets at night. You get the point. Lose weight. You guys know what to do. Find the right diet to do that. Well, me sitting down and making up a nice diet plan isn't going to help until I take an action of exercising more. This is going to be my execute improvement actions. Exercise more, eating those salads, for lunch instead of having the chicken sandwiches. As I'm doing it, I have to ask myself, did we get there yet? Is there any kind of metrics or key performance indexes or indicators I can follow? Like maybe every week I can check my weight to see if I lost a half a pound or a pound. So I'm evaluating the metrics. Hopefully, as time is going on, I hit the goal. Then the question is, how do we keep this going? I go back to the doctor after I've hit my 200, and then he's going to say, give me a whole new vision. The point of continual improvement is you never stop. It's actually a circle. It never ends. Not because you hit one goal doesn't mean you can't hit the next. Maybe when I hit 200 pounds, I get to the end here, this bottom part here, I got the 200 pounds, then is how do I keep this going? Because now I can become an amateur bodybuilder. Maybe I can improve other parts of my health or other parts of my life, and I can just keep going. This is just my weight loss continual improvement. In your organization, you may say, what's the vision? Let's do one talking about improving customer satisfaction at a help desk. Let's go through all these steps now. So the first one up is, what is the vision? The vision for you is going to be, hey, how do we improve customer support at the help desk? That is the vision. Okay, you want to define this. Now, this provides a framework for all the next steps that we're going to be taking. It's going to generally be a high-level vision. The more specific, the better, but high level is okay. Where are we right now? But right now, we are at 60% customer satisfaction. That's where we are right now. The success of an improvement initiative rests on a clear, accurate understanding of the starting point. This is a key element here. We want to have what's called a current state. There's what we call current state, and there's something we're going to call current states and desired state. So right now we are here, the current state. The question is, what is the gap between the current state and the desired state? In customer satisfaction, your help desk may be at 60%. Maybe you want to go to maybe making it 90%. So the gap is 30%. So current state and desired state. Okay, you want to go through as much objective ways of doing your current state. Where do you want to be? Okay, we just talked about this. Outlines the targeted desired that you want to be in. This is the gap analysis. The current state, 60%, the desired state, 90%. We got to find a way of doing that. The question is, how do we go from 60% to 90%? How do we get there? You need to experiment with different approaches. How are we going to go from A to B? What actions should we take? In this step, you will act upon the plan. Maybe you come up with retraining, right? So in this one here, is how do we get there? Maybe we're going to retrain the help desk. Maybe we're going to introduce more AI software that we can give the users. Maybe we're going to change some of the buggy software. Take actions. Go change the buggy software. Let's go utilize more AI software. Let's retrain the help desk. We got to take action on it. If you're building software, use waterfall, use agile methods, may have a lot of iterations. As you're doing this, are you measuring this over time? Are you asking yourself, are we meeting those particular steps? Is it improving as time is moving on? And if you do meet it, congratulations, you have met your 90% customer satisfaction. All right? The focus is, but you know what? We're not done yet. Let's keep this momentum going. All right? How do we keep this going? Now that we're in mode of getting better, maybe we can improve other parts. Maybe we can introduce new methods of making things better. All right. Don't forget, once progress is made, try not to lose that momentum. That's the key here. Okay. I want to talk to you guys on this part of the course. Okay. And I'm going to stop this course right here. I'm actually not stopping it, but I want to go back to the exam objectives in this part of the course. I'm going to go back to the exam objectives. I thought I had it open. Here we go. And I'm going to go back to the exam objectives. And I want to show you guys something. So far we have covered a lot. And I want to point out a couple of things. Number one, all of the things we have covered, things like definitions, which I gave you. You have 2 questions on this. This number of marks is question counts. You see this where I describe the key concepts, 2 questions on this. Service offer and service relationships, 1 question. The guiding principles, 1 question. Here, what is the nature of them? 1 question. But we just went through some of these guiding principles, 5 questions. The 4 elements of the service, the 4 dimensions, 2. The service value system, the whole thing on just understanding it, 1. How does the service value chain, how does it all link up? 1. Knowing the components of it, 1, the 6 components. Now, I want to just point out something. Remember I told you guys you need 26 points to pass, right? See that? It tells us there. How much marks? 26 marks to pass. The entire exam is 40 questions, 40 marks. I want to point out something to you guys. This section here, know the purpose and key terms of 15 ITIL practices and understand 7 ITIL practices. 5, 2, and 15 combined is 24 marks. The practices, this section of my course is going to cover 24 points on the test. Yeah, 24 questions. That means the majority of the questions. In this section, the ITIL 4 foundation, the ITIL 4 in general has 34 practices. This course does not cover every one of those practices. This course covers 15 practices. Not in depth, all right? It's 15 practices that we just need to understand what these practices are. Notice they're just a level 1. There are terms you need to memorize, which we have on the slide, level 1. But 7 of these 15 practices, these things here, you need to know them in depth. Not in depth, but you need to know them well, as about half the test comes from these things here. So if you have the presentation or you watch the long form video of this course, make sure to really, before you go into your exam room, really know these 7 practices, as they basically cover half the test. Okay, let's go back to this here. Hopefully that made sense for you guys. So let's go into these practices, because one of the most common questions I get is, what is a practice? Well, the ITIL practices, all right, is a set, basically a practice is a set of organizational resources for performing work or accomplishing an objective. In managing IT in general, all right, in managing a company in general, you have practices like managing IT security is a practice, managing a help desk is a practice, managing your problems is a practice, deploying software is a practice. ITIL breaks down practices into 3 categories. General practices, there's 14 of those. These comes from adapted for service, and they come from general business. These 14 practices that I'm going to show you guys what they are in a minute, but these 14 practices is just for general business. There are 17 of practices that are called service practice. This is for really core IT management. Think of managing a help desk. And then there are technical practices. This is where we're going to push out technology from. Now, I want to point out that there's 34 practices, 14, 17, 31, 334. But ITIL only covers 15 of them. And those 15, we're not going to go in depth into all of them. Only 7 of them we go in depth into. Let's get into it. The first one up we have is general management practices. I want to point out these practices. Think about this: strategy management, risk management, project management, portfolio management, knowledge management. All of this you can use in any part of your business. Every part of your business, for example, have project management. This course, ITIL, only covers 4 of these things. The rest of these are not covered in the ITIL Foundation. That's covered in other courses from ITIL. So if you want to learn more about these, you can either purchase and read the ITIL Foundation's books, or you can just take another ITIL course higher up the ladder, as this is just the beginning. Let's get into these 4 practices. You're going to notice some of them I go in depth, some of them I don't, because some of these are in depth. You really need to cover them in depth. First practice, continual improvement. Now, we covered the continual improvement process earlier, but this is now going to become a practice. Now, continual improvement is one of those practices where you have to consistently do it because we never stop improving. So why do we want to do this? Well, this is done to align the organization practices and services with changing business needs. Now, business needs will change all the time. As the world evolves, we can best be sure that our products and services that we offer our customers, I'm talking about organizational-wide, needs to be improving, and that means that we need to have ongoing improvements of our products and services that we offer. Key activities here, guys, is we're going to want to ensure that we encourage continual improvement across the organization. We're going to want to make sure that we secure time and budget for continual improvement. And we want to make sure that we identify and log any opportunities for this. Now, when you're thinking continuous improvement, don't think that it's just for IT. Don't think it's just for finance. Continual improvement is the responsibility of everyone within the business. Senior management is responsible for embedding continual improvement in all work that's done. If your senior management is not up to consistently improving things, you can best bet no improvements will ever get done. We want to embed this into people's mind. It's how we think. One thing we want to be familiar with is this thing we call a CIR, a Continual Improvement Register. How do we track what needs to be improved? How things are being improved? What things could be improved? How can we track that? Well, we can use a database or structured document of something we'll call a continuous improvement register. I'm envisioning something like an Excel sheet that just lists things, tasks, actions, practices, or services or products that we can improve, put it all in that CIR. Next practice in this section is going to be information security. Now, if you guys know me, I'm big into security. I'm a big CISSP person. So when we're talking information security here, we are talking about the security of everything within the company that deals with information. That's all the servers, all the data, all the workstations, all the phones, all the watches, everything within that particular business itself. Now, there's a couple of quick things here we want to mention. This is done to ensure that the organization can conduct its business. It's about managing and understanding of the CIA. What are we talking about CIA? So confidentiality, integrity, and availability is what's called the CIA triad, and it is the core of information security. Confidentiality is ensure that secret data stays secret. Integrity is to ensure that there is only authorized modification of data. Confidentiality is ensuring there's authorized reading or access to that data. And availability is to ensure that data is available when needed. These three things must be met for security to be adequate within the organization. Other things here we want to do is we want to manage the authentication and non-repudiation of information. So when we say authentication, we're thinking about having someone prove who they are. When you log into a computer and you put your username and password, your username is not the authentication. Your username is telling the computer, hey, I'm Bob. The authentication is when you put the correct password. So we need to manage the authentication. And it's not just done with passwords. We can have smart cards, biometrics, thumbprints, and so on. We need to have non-repudiation. This is ensuring that someone can't deny that an event took place. So if someone committed a crime, if someone stole data, we need to have a system set up that they can't deny that, you know what, hey, it wasn't me. One way of doing that is just having physical cameras in place that if someone steals something and they said, it wasn't me, I didn't steal it, well, you can say, well, look at this footage, you actually stole it. Non-repudiation. Security is going to involve developing policies, processes, changing the behaviors of your users. The weakest link in any security is the users. Changing the behaviors, managing security risk, implementing controls like encryption controls, configuring firewalls, antivirus software, and so on. Now we want to maintain, we got to maintain a good balance. Security can be very restrictive. We want to maintain a balance between prevention of security incidents, all right, to ensure they don't occur. We want to balance detection. We want to be able to rapidly detect and reliable detection of security incidents, and we want to correct these incidents. We want to balance this across functionality, because the more security we put in, the more functionality we might be losing. Another practice is going to be relationship management. In an organization, we're going to have tons of relationships with all kinds of stakeholders, whether that's outside stakeholders as vendors and regulators, inside stakeholders like your CEO, your CIO, your users. Let's have a practice in place to manage these particular relationships. Now, when we're taking a look at these relationships, we want to make sure that we establish and foster, improve the links between the companies and your stakeholders, whoever they are. You want to be able to identify who your stakeholders are, internal and external. Analyze them. What are their needs? What are they looking for? Monitor this relationship. And of course, continuously improvement of these relationships. We must understand the needs of our stakeholders. This is both for our users, internal to IT, or external users to the organization. We want to make sure the satisfaction is high and positive relationships between your organization and them is established and maintained. Customer priorities for new or change services is aligned with the desired business outcome. So whatever they are looking for, we have to make sure that we are aligned to getting that done. Another practice is called supplier management. Now, who's going to be our suppliers? This is going to be external folks. This is going to be Dell as a supplier to you, unless you're Dell. Microsoft, again, unless you're Microsoft. AWS, Google. We need to make sure we manage these suppliers, done to ensure the suppliers and their performances are managed appropriately to support the provision and quality of services. If we don't manage our AWS correct, if we don't manage our Google accounts correct, you better best bet our quality will drop significantly. We want to create a more closer, more collaborative relationship with suppliers to uncover and realize new value, reduction of risk of failure. Sometimes there may be products and services that are being offered by vendors right now that we don't even know exist. And if we do know they exist, we can improve our quality. So that's important. All right, moving on here. Now, service management practices. This is where most of these 17 services comes from, right? 15 practices, I said, 15 practices that we need to know. Most of them comes from here. There are 17 practices in service management practices, 17 of these service management practices. The 15 that we have to know of the 34, look how much of them is here. Now, some of these, a good portion of them, we have to go a little bit in depth in, and there's a bunch of terms that I want you guys to know. And for that, I want to go back to the exam objectives because this is important. So looking at the exam objectives here, so we just covered information security, relationship, supplier, and IT. No, we didn't cover IT. We covered supplier management and continuous improvement. I want to point out that as I get into these practices right now, there are some terms you're going to get. These definitions we got to cover. All right, notice there's going to be 2 questions on memorizing the definition of these terms. We only did continual improvement, but I covered the improvement model already. That's that 7-step model we looked at earlier. The rest of this now we will go into this. So make sure you really understand, again, these particular practices. These 7 practices is almost half of your exam questions. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's get into this. The first one up we have is going to be change enablement. What exactly is this? Well, this is about change management. Every time something breaks in an organization, IT in particular, something stops functioning, something stops working, the first thing people say is, hey, what changed? Right? You call a user, calls a help desk, they have a problem. The user says, my computer broke, and the help desk says, did you change anything? What is a change? Changes are defined, and they have a particular definition. The addition, modification, or removal of anything that can have a direct or indirect effect on a service. So changes could be add-in or modifying a service, right? It could be even removing of a service. Now, it's not just an entire service, but it could be in a component of a service. Changes are inevitable. Why? Because we change all the time. If we don't change, we don't improve. There's no improvements without changes. But you have to be careful with changes, right? Because there's a lot of risk involved with changes. We want to maximize the number of successful service and product changes because we want to properly assess risk. Every time we try to improve something, there's a risk that we mess it up. We want to make sure that changes are authorized and changes are scheduled and changes are assessed. So identify a change, assess a change, test the change, implement the change, verify that it actually worked. Change control. Every organization needs to have some form of change control. You must balance the need to make useful changes that will deliver added value when needed to protect customers and users from adverse effective changes. Every time we implement a change, we have to say, is this going to be adding value? Is it going to actually increase the value of our services and products and services? The person or group who approves changes is known as a change authority. We're not going to get in depth into this for ITIL Foundation, but you need to have some kind of higher authority. No one should be making unauthorized changes. In fact, many of the incidents in IT occurs because of unauthorized changes. A correct change authority is assigned to each type of change to ensure change control is effective and efficient. Now, there are some different kinds of changes we want to be familiar with. First up is going to be a standard change. These are going to be low risk, pre-authorized, keyword is going to be pre-authorized here, changes. These are changes that somebody may ask, maybe they want to change the printer that they're using. And they already have a procedure, like they're already authorized to access that printer. They don't need information security to okay it. So it's a low risk change, doesn't really affect them, it's pre-authorized. They're well understood, fully documented, and can be implemented without additional authorization. A user may request a change of software that they've been pre-authorized to access. Most of the time, though, when we think of changes, we're thinking of a normal change. This needs to be scheduled, assessed, and authorized. Maybe we're changing the configuration of an operating system on a router. Maybe we're updating a particular device or changing an entire firewall. The other kind of changes is we've been dealing with a lot lately here at TIA is emergency changes. This must be implemented as soon as possible. Emergency changes are not usually included in the change schedule. Why? Because we probably didn't even know about it, but it must get done and usually expedited to ensure it can be implemented quickly. This is when Microsoft pushes out an emergency patch to Windows Server on Thursday night at 12 o'clock because there's a hole in the operating system that allows people to just take control of it. And you got to install it right away. If not, you're a massive vulnerability. It's something that you didn't predict, something you didn't know about, and you just came to learn about it at 12:01 on a Thursday night. Even worse, a Friday night. So those are emergency changes. Incident. Okay? Every one of you will get incident on your exam. It is the hottest topic. There's two things I want you guys to know. Incidents and problems. Okay? Those are guarantee every one of you will get a question on incidents and problems. All right? I'll go over them in depth right now. What's an incident? An incident is an unplanned interruption to a service or reduction in the quality of a service. So it's unplanned interruption. That's the main key here. It may stop it completely or it may reduce how it functions. Now, what's incidents? Well, the software dying, the server underperforming, the server dying, the user workstation broke, the backup failed and we can't restore. Anything that you can think of that's negative in IT is generally considered an incident. Our job in incident management, this particular practice, is to minimize the negative impact of these incidents because we want to restore service as fast as possible. If the email server go down, we want to be able to restore that email server as fast as possible. Incident management can have a huge impact on customer satisfaction and how users perceive us. Yes, because if we're providing the email service and the email service keeps going down, or the email never gets sent, or the server disconnects, their perception of us is very bad. We want to make sure that we could log these incidents. We want to make sure that we're able to manage them correctly and resolve them in a timely way that meets expectations. Sometimes we have agreements with our customers where we have to fix the incidents within 2 hours or within 24 hours. Certain incidents may have to be prioritized. Maybe the incidents affecting the CEO or senior management may get prioritized at a higher rate. Now, a couple of quick things here on incident. A few incidents, you can resolve them by going to, certain customers can resolve them by utilizing self-help. All right, that's not uncommon. Sometimes we have these self-help things. For example, we may teach the users or give them documents, like if your workstation fails to respond, reboot it. That fixes a lot of problems. Now, use of these self-help records should be captured for use in measurements and improvements. I want to point that out. Here's why. If we provide self-help to our users, and the users are using self-help and they're not alerting the service desk or help desk, we may think our services are great, but they're actually not. They actually don't function well. It's just that users are fixing them themselves and they're not reporting it to us. So something to think about. Some incidents can be resolved by the service desk. This is your help desk. Sometimes a user may have a problem with an application. They call the help desk. The help desk says, hey, yeah, in order to fix that, just close it, reopen it, clear this cache or something. More complex would be needed to escalate it higher up. Sometimes it's a server issue or a network issue needs to be fixed by a network engineer. Incidents can be escalated to even suppliers. Maybe it's a problem with Dell servers in particular, or Windows or Microsoft, and it may need to go all the way up to that external supplier. In some cases, an incident may bring down an entire data center. Incidents of loss of power and certain disaster recovery plans may need to kick in. You want to make sure that these incidents are thoroughly logged. Have a login process to manage them. Now, you may have separate processes for major incidents, like a whole data center falling, versus managing something that is small with a user. And you may have separate incidents, whole separate department for security incidents. A security incident just doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be assessed to see what are the ramifications of this. Did we breach some kind of regulation that then needs to be reported to all the customers and their regulators? Next one we have is IT assets. Now, if there's one thing IT folks have a lot of, and you probably have a lot at home, and I do, is stuff. What am I talking about? Stuff. I'm talking about all the hardware, software, networking gears that we have, client devices, and now cloud services. So when we talk of IT assets, we're talking of any financially valuable component that can contribute to the delivery of an IT product or service. Any financially valuable component. And again, it's not just what I'm listed, it's not just hardware and software, but it's network, and it's cloud services and client devices. All right? But in some cases, it can also include non-IT assets, such as the building or information that have financial value, like data. One of the biggest IT asset management, maybe data management, that's out there. So we need some kind of a database. We need some kind of a system to keep track of all the IT assets. For example, when it comes to hardware, we'll have to do a full life cycle of hardware. When we purchase them, how we update them, what we do with them throughout the time, and then we have to dispose of them correctly. So we have a whole practice on IT asset management. Make sure we keep a nice inventory register of all of these IT assets, maybe a nice database of all the assets that you have. And again, it's not just hardware and software. Think networking gear, think cloud services, think client devices, and even data. Okay, something we are going to have some terms on that you guys want to be familiar with is what's called monitor and event management. Now, what's an event? An event is any change of state that has significance for the management of a service or configuration item. We'll cover configuration in a few minutes. Configuration item. Events are typically recognized through notifications created by IT service. Configuration items are monitoring tools. Configuration items are anything that could be configured. Think of a computer, think of a router, think of a piece of software, think of a server. Those are configuration items. So an event is any change of state that has some kind of significant meaning to us. Events are generally classified as one of three things. Number one, it's informational event. Informational events do not require action at the time that they're identified. Informational events are going to be like backup complete. By the way, if you're thinking about, is this like event logs in Windows? Yes, this is what this is. Think of like an event log in a router, a server, a desktop, your phone or something. Events are going to be informational. Hey, backup is done. Computer restarted. Computer shut down. User logged in. Warning event allow actions to be taken before any negative impact. This is hard drive is getting filled on backup. Backup 90%. Backup drive is 90% filled. Computer is having performance errors. These are, when we get warnings, we should act on them so that way the backup drive doesn't get filled and then we can't back up anymore. Or the computer just stops working because we run out of hardware or performance issues. So warnings are things that it's telling us before anything bad happens. Exceptions. These are going to require some kind of actions. All right, require actions, even though business impact may not yet have been experienced. For example, the backup failed because you didn't look at the warning and you ran out of disk space. Now you need to take an action to get more storage on that machine. You're not going to notice, the business is not going to experience any kind of loss yet because the server hasn't failed yet. But if the server does fail, you're not going to be able to restore because you didn't have no backup. So you may not notice the impact yet. So make sure you understand an event, anything that has a significance on that service. Now, every one of you, from the beginning of ITIL time, everybody gets a question on problem. And you need to understand, a problem is a cause or potential cause of one or more incidents. Okay, remember that. What's a problem? It's the cause of one or more incidents. An incident is a degradation or removal of a particular service, right? It's a disruption in that service. So what is problem management about? Well, it's done to reduce the likelihood and impact of incidents by recognizing actual and potential causes of these incidents and managing workarounds and known errors. So what is a workaround known error? These I'm going to cover. Known error is a problem that has been analyzed but has not yet been resolved. Let's go into this. A problem. So a user called the help desk and said that he can't connect to the server. Just this one user. Okay, that's an incident. The help desk logs it. Bob called and he can't access the server. Mary calls up and says, she can't access the internet. She can't do her work because she can't access the internet, and she also cannot access the server. John calls up and says that he can't access the database, and he can't access the internet also. Lots of incidents are happening all over the place. Well, all of these incidents may have a core problem. What is that? Well, the switch died. The work group switch that they're connected to give them access to the internet and the server and all that switch died. The problem is the switch. This is something that we need to understand, that when you start having multiple incidents all over the place, and they might seem connected or they may not, you have to investigate the root cause. What's causing all of these incidents? That's the problem. So a problem is a cause or potential cause of one or more of these incidents. Why are we doing this? Because we want to look at the causes of most of these incidents that we're having. We want to get to the core of the incident. Now, there's this thing called a known error. This happens sometimes when there is an application that you built, and if people use it in a certain way, it may crash. A user calls the help desk and says, Andrew, every time I use this application this way, it crashes. Then the help desk technician, I'm going to say, well, yeah, that's a known error. Just don't use it this way. This is This is a way that you can work around it. This is a way that we know this error exists and we haven't found a solution, but there might be another way of getting around this problem. And this brings me to, I just want to cover a quick definition of workaround. A workaround is a solution that reduces or eliminates the impact of an incident or problem of which a full solution is not yet available. Some workaround reduces the likelihood of incidents. So a workaround is, let's say there's an application that if utilized in a certain way, it crashes. So what you do is you come up with another way of using it to get the same result and it doesn't crash it. That would be a workaround. You're going around the issue. A couple of things about problems. Problems are related to incidents. All right, but they have a distinction. All right, number one, problems have an impact on users or business processes and that must be resolved so that normal functionality can take place. All right. Not all incidents within IT may not affect users, but generally problems do. Problems are the causes of incidents, right? Remember, multiple incidents is a problem. They require investigation and analysis. This reduces the number and impact of future incidents. When we fix a problem, we're going to probably fix a lot of incidents. Problems should be prioritized based on the risk they pose. If one problem poses a risk to an entire department, fix that versus a problem that only affects 2 or 3 users. When a problem cannot be resolved, it is often useful to find and document a workaround. Yes, we just mentioned a workaround. If you can't fix the problem right away, then try to at least get a workaround. Error control manages known errors, right? So error control includes identification of permanent solutions which may result in change requests for implementation of a solution. Error we're talking about here is going to be error in software, error in the way we set up hardware. We want to be able to identify these things and fix them. Next practice we have is going to be release management. Now, release management. We are going to be, quote unquote, releasing things into production. What is a release? Well, it's a version of a service or other configuration item or a collection of configuration items that is available for users. This could be a potential version of a software. It could be a modification of a piece of software that we're releasing. We want to do this to make new and change services available for users, available for use. If you design a new service and you haven't pushed it out, there's no value to that service yet. So we need a place where a management practice where we can push and release those services. A release may include different infrastructure and application components that work together. Think about if we're going to be pushing out a new accounting application, it's not just the application, right? It's the infrastructure needed to run that application. If it's in the cloud, we still need to have internet connection to the workstation. Releases can range in scope from small, including just one minor change to a feature, to a very large one. So a release can be something as small as updating a piece of software or putting a new feature to releasing a whole new one. Service configuration. The word configuration item I mentioned earlier. What exactly is that? It's any component that needs to be managed in order to deliver an IT service. Configuration items includes things like hardware, software, networks, buildings, even people, suppliers, and documentation. So when you're thinking of a configuration item, we need a way, some kind of database, some kind of system. There is an ITIL does mention, but it's not one of the practices here. The CMS, configuration management database, and all that kind of things. I would like to get into it in this course, but it is beyond the scope of ITIL Foundation. We want to make sure that when you configure an item, for example, a router, is it configured correctly? Does that router has the right configuration for that particular router, or is it the wrong configuration? Does the software has the right configuration? This is done to ensure accurate and reliable information about the configuration of services and the CIs that support them is available. Do we have a central system where we document the configuration of all the different devices in the organization? That's what this is talking about also. This particular one, configuration management, is going to show us that we need to have a big central system where we're going to store all these configuration items that we have, all the devices, the routers, the software, the hardware, And we're going to store all the configuration of all these devices. That's what this is getting into. Now, another big one for your exam is going to be the service desk. In America, I want to point out that ITIL, I'm not sure if I mentioned it's a British thing, even though it's used by all the big companies. They call it service desk. Here in the United States, we're going to call this thing a help desk. Same thing. What is a service desk? So the service desk is there to capture the demand for incident resolution and service requests. So they're capturing the demand for this. They're the entry point and single point of contact for the service provider for all users. Users within an organization generally don't have the direct contact to the network admin, the system administrator, the cloud administrator. No, the central contact for them, their single point of contact for the users is that help desk. When they call IT, they're generally calling the help desk. The service desk provides a clear path for users. This is where they can report issues, they can ask questions or queries, they can have a request, like, can you give me access to this printer? Have them acknowledge, assign, own, and take action. So generally, the service desk will own these types of requests, these kinds of queries, these kinds of problems, because the service desk generally logs them. Now, how are you going to get there? This includes phone calls, service portals, mobile applications. There's even knowledge bases, and nowadays we even have live chats and chatbots. There's more ways, this is just some of them, to get in contact with a service desk. A service desk now is generally could just be a tangible team of folks working together in a single location. Some organizations have many branches and offices all over the place. Some of those will be serviced using a centralized service desk, requires supporting technology. So a centralized service desk is this. You have 10 locations, but you have one of these locations that has a service desk for all the other locations that people call in. You don't have one service desk per location. Some of us have a virtual service desk, requires more sophisticated technology, involving more sophisticated routing and escalations of issues. These might be things in cloud solutions also. Now, staffing, this is important. Service desk staff requires training and competencies across a number of technical and business areas. They need to have good customer service skill. Trust me on this, guys. IT people, I'm one of them. We're not the best when it comes to customer satisfaction and customer speaking with people. I think most of us do IT because we don't like people. Except people that work on the service desk. When you work at a service desk, you're customer facing. You need to have great customer skill. In fact, I would go as far as saying it's best to have a service desk employee that has better customer service skill than technical skill. Technical skills we can teach. Technical skills can be backed up by technical people behind the service desk. But we need to make sure that our service desk has great customer support skill. The key skill is to be able to fully understand and diagnose incidents that's coming through them. How do you diagnose and understand? By speaking to your customers. Next practice, service level management. First of all, what's a service level? Well, it's one or more metrics that define expected or achieved service quality. A lot of us, when I think of service level, I'm thinking of an SLA, service level agreement. In an SLA, you're going to have basically a predefined level of expected uptime on a particular thing like internet line or particular IT service. For example, you get an internet line that has a 99.99959% of uptime. That's a very large uptime. You're going to probably get that in real dedicated lines. So you're going to have this agreement between you and a particular service provider, like your internet provider. Within the organization yourself, you're probably going to have agreed level of service performance between individual functions such as finance and IT. Because finance requires a high level of uptime and immediate response to requests, their service level needs to be set very high and very clear. So this is done to set clear business targets. Maybe the finance department needs a immediate response, or at least within a 10 or 15 minute window. For service level, you want to deliver this at the agreed level. You want to make sure it's properly assessed, monitored, and managed. Service level management provides the end-to-end visibility of the organizational service. Yes, we want to make sure. See, people, if we don't deliver the service at the agreed level, they're going to view it as not being good. A couple of things here. Let's have a shared view of service and target service level with the customer. The customer can't want a 5-minute response, but then our review is a 10-minute response, or we can only do 10 minutes. We want to ensure that we meet these defined service levels. We want to perform service reviews. Are we meeting them over time? We want to capture and report on issues that may affect it in there. Another practice we have is going to be a service request management. Service request. When people are a user sitting on a help desk, sitting working somewhere, like somebody in the accounting department, they may have a request for service. Hey, I need access to this application. I need access to this file or information. I need access to this printer. People are going to have requests for specific service. We need to be able to fulfill that. So what are we talking about here? Well, service request is a request from a user or a user's authorized representative, maybe the user's manager, that initiates a service action which has been agreed as a normal part of service delivery. This is important to understand. When somebody requests a particular service from us, maybe an access to an application or a printer, do they already have a pre-agreement from that? Generally, when given access to information, for example, information security would have had to approve of that. Generally, when we do service requests, that action has been agreed as part of it. If it's not, it may have to go through information security, and that's a whole other separate process. This is done to support the agreed level of quality by handling all predefined user-initiated service requests in an efficient, effective, user-friendly manner. So I want to point that out. Generally, when we're talking with service requests here, we're talking about things that are predefined, things that are already known. If a user calls and asks for an application access, that should have been already known that he has access to it, but he's not using it, and help desk can just give him access. If it's not predefined, then information security would have to come in and allow or deny access. Each service request would include one or more of the following. Sometimes people request for a service delivery action, like remove or add. They may request for information. They may request for a provision of a resource. They may request for access to that, or sometimes they just call to give feedback or compliments or complaints on a particular service. Service request management should include the service request himself and how are we going to fulfill it. Sometimes these things are automated. I want to point that out. Sometimes they're fully automated. Policy should be established regarding what service requests will be fulfilled with limited or no more additional approval. The expectations of users regarding fulfillment time should be clearly set. So if somebody requests a service, maybe you can give them access right away, or maybe it takes 10 to 20 minutes, maybe it takes 2 days. We want to make sure we push that out there. Okay, coming down towards the end here. In the last section is technical management practices. There's only 3 of these in the entire ITIL book. We're only covering one, deployment management. Let's get into this. Deployment management. This is done to move new or change hardware, software, documentation processes, or any component to a live environment. So I want to point out, deployment management is to move new or change. That's the key here. When we design something, we code it, we test it, we now have to deploy it out to the live environment. How do we go from this thing that we have just created, changed, or modified to the live environment? This practice does that. It also involves deploying components to other environments for testing. We could be moving things from coding to testing. There are a number of approaches, and I want to go over that in a minute. Many organizations use a combination of approaches. Now, what are these approaches? Well, I'm going to tell you guys one of the approaches we use. I'm just going to jump down because I just did this yesterday. It was a big bang approach. New or change components are deployed to all targets at the same time. So we just bought a brand new piece of software for our editors to use, and there's only 4 of these stations. So we just did a big bang approach. We pushed this software to everybody's workstation just in one shot. Big bang approach. The big bang approach is like when you deploy in Windows 11. Everybody left Friday at Windows 10. They come back Monday. Everybody had Windows 11. That's considered a big bang. A phased approach, the newer change components are deployed to just a part of the production environment. So in this particular one, you may do Windows 11 in one department. Maybe you do it in IT, then you do it in finance, then you do it in sales, then you do it in management. So you're phasing it out over time. Continuous components are integrated and tested and deployed when they are needed. Continuous delivery is continuous changing of software. We use this in DevOps. So in DevOps, DevOps is pushing out software on a continuous basis to meet business needs. So I have a certification in that, by the way. In DevOps, what you're doing is continuous delivery. You're always pushing out new components to a particular software. Think of a website that never stops getting updated. Think of like Facebook or Instagram or one of these famous social media platforms that consistently getting updated, new delivery, new components always coming out. Continuous delivery, never ends. Pull deployment. This is also famous. This is when new or changed software is made available in a controlled repository and users download the software to client devices. Here's what this is. So pull delivery is when you have software maybe stored on a particular server and users' workstations doesn't have that software, but they know it's available. And when they want it, they can go and pull it as needed. They can just go and say install and installs for them. So we don't push it out to them. It's available in a central repository, and they can go and download it and install it. It's been pre-authorized for them to go download it and install it, and they can use it. So those are all of our practices, and the entire course comes to an end. Now, I want to point out something here to you guys, and that is going to be that we're all done, and I want to point out something here is that this was meant to be a cram course. I tried to cover every one of the exam objectives and just tell you what you need to know to pass your exam as fast as possible. A couple quick things I want to point out is that if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to me. A couple of things here I want to point out is that this course is available in a full 2-day, 16-hour format where we expand on everything a lot more. You can get a live version of this course where I teach it myself and with a few other instructors at tiaedu.com. If your job is paying or you want to get group training, we do that also. If you're looking for an e-learning course and the exam voucher, even if you don't want the e-learning course and this is enough, get the exam voucher from tiaedu, tiaexams.com. This one here is where you can get the e-learning course. If you purchase the exam voucher from us, not only do you get it at an amazing discounted price, but you're going to get it includes the full-length class. The full-length class is about 8 hours, 8 or 10 hours. It includes 6 mock exams. This one didn't have any mock exams. I did a video on the channel, check it out for a practice exam, but make sure to do a lot of mock exams. The mock exams I include here in the voucher. And when you purchase the voucher, it's almost like a real test. It's everything you need to know to pass. If you've already gotten an exam voucher from your job or somewhere, at least get the practice exams. It's 6 full-length exams. It covers every single one of the exam objectives. It goes in depth. If you can pass my 6 mock exams, you can ace your exam, I'm pretty sure. Guys, I am Andrew Rumdale. I am the author of this course and also an accredited ITIL instructor. I hope you guys found amazing value in this course. I know I was talking fast. Hopefully you guys learned a lot of information, learned what ITIL is. And with that in mind, I'll see you guys in the next video.